She said it calmly, flipping through my resume like it was someone else's story. But every project on that page, that was me. Every late night, every breakthrough, every crisis averted mine. Lauren didn't flinch. No hesitation. No shame. Just that smug smile. Like she was doing me a favor. But what stung most wasn't just the words. It was the fact that she'd used my latest design to land our firm a $40 million contract, and then used that same success to push me out. I sat there, still, as if moving would somehow make it real. My name is Elena Hartley. I'm 45, an architect, and a mother. For nearly a decade, I believed that talent and loyalty would always matter. But this morning, I learned the rules are different for people like Lauren. She thought she had won. She thought I'd walk away quietly. But some blueprints, they don't reveal their complete design until the final reveal. This story will make you angry. It'll also make you cheer, and the ending, you won't see it coming. Before we dive in, grab a cup of tea, turn up the volume, and don't forget to drop a comment. Tell us where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your part of the world. When I first joined Halden & Pierce, the office was smaller. The windows rattled in the winter, and the coffee machine only made burnt espresso. But it felt like home. I was a single mom, newly moved to Seattle, balancing night shifts and daycare drop-offs. Yet something about walking into that design studio each morning made me feel like I belonged somewhere that mattered. In those early years, I wasn't anyone special. Just someone who worked hard, quietly, consistently, with a love for clean lines and practical beauty. My big break came when I was asked to redesign a failed community center plan in Tacoma. The deadline impossible, the budget tighter than a drum. And I had never led a project solo before. But I stayed up every night for weeks sketching by hand while my daughter Clara slept on the couch next to me. That center opened 6 months later. Under budget, on schedule. That was when the partners began referring to me by name in meetings. That was when I became someone. Lauren arrived 2 years after that. Young, sharp, always dressed like she'd just stepped off a magazine cover. She introduced herself as eager to learn and shadowed me on 3 projects. I thought I was mentoring her. We'd grab coffee talk shop, even laugh about impossible clients. She always asked great questions, seemed genuinely curious. I liked her. At least, I wanted to like her. Looking back, the signs were there. She started offering to clean up my presentations. At first it helped, I was never great with slides. But soon things I said in meetings began to sound strangely familiar when Lauren repeated them. Just more polished, more confident, and credited to her. Still, I brushed it off. I was too busy to worry about appearances. I told myself as long as the work was good, the rest would follow. But the more Lauren rose, the more invisible I felt. By the time she was named junior partner, people had stopped asking me about my concepts. They started asking Lauren, and I started wondering if I'd handed her the ladder she was now using to climb past me. It wasn't just about recognition anymore. Something deeper was shifting. And I didn't know yet that it was only the beginning. The first time I truly saw it, how Lauren was reshaping the story, I was watching her present my waterfront proposal to the senior partners. She didn't even flinch when she called it our latest innovation. I sat there stunned as she clicked through slides I had built from scratch, quoting lines I'd scribbled in my sketchbook at 2 a.m. The team nodded in approval, impressed by her clarity, her confidence. No one asked me a single question. It was subtle at first. She'd suggest combining our names on presentations just for alignment, she said. Then she began hosting meetings without me. Clients I'd worked with for years started being rerouted to her. And slowly, my inbox got quieter, my calendar emptier. At one point, I tried to bring it up gently, just a mention in passing. Hey, Lauren, I noticed the Kensington files didn't have my name on the submission form. She smiled that same smooth smile and said, Oh, just a clerical thing. You know how rushed we were. Then she changed the subject. I didn't push. I should have. Marcus, one of the junior designers, caught on before I did. He'd drop by my desk with little updates. Hey, did you know Lauren used your flood resilience diagram in the Bayview pitch, always cautious, constantly checking over his shoulder. The worst part? It worked. The partners loved her. She was the polished face of a firm poised for growth. Meanwhile, I became the background reliable, but replaceable. There was a moment, maybe the last moment, when I believed it could all be salvaged. We'd just wrapped the Barton District redevelopment, a win I was quietly proud of. The email blast went out to announce the success. The spotlight photo, Lauren, the quote, Lauren. My name didn't appear once. That night I stayed late. Just me and the hum of the floor lights. I opened my project folders, started labeling files, backing them up onto a private drive. I didn't know what I was preparing for. But something inside me whispered, "You'll need this later." And I would. Because soon it wasn't just about who got the credit. It became about something far worse, something I didn't see coming until it was already in motion. A week after the Barton project wrapped, I got a call from someone I didn't recognize. His name was Oliver Grant, a senior architect from Axiom West, our firm's biggest competitor on the West Coast. "Hi, Elena," he said casually, like we'd spoken before. "Just wanted to follow up on the proposal you sent us last month. The Coastal Greenway? We're excited about it." I froze. "I think there's been a mistake," I said carefully. "I've never sent anything to Axiom." There was a pause. Then he replied, "That's strange. The pitch came through your firm. We were told you consulted on it." My stomach tightened. He offered to send over the files, and a few minutes later they landed in my inbox. I opened the attachment and my world shifted. There it was, a conceptual plan I'd been toying with for weeks. Late-night sketches, ideas I hadn't even shared yet, not with Lauren, not with anyone. Elevated flood-adaptive platforms, integrated stormwater gardens, modular paths for seasonal events. It was all mine. Every element, every note. Except now, the header read Joint Development Concept, Axiom West, ex Halden and Pierce, and Lauren's name appeared first. Mine wasn't anywhere. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. The only way those files could have gotten out was if someone had gone through my local drafts. And I remembered with awful clarity the week before. I'd been in Vancouver with Clara. I'd left my office computer on. Lauren had been in that week covering a few internal meetings. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I opened my backup drive and searched for the file timestamp. It matched exactly, except the version Lauren submitted had minor tweaks. Just enough to call it a collaboration. It wasn't a mistake. She had taken something personal, something unfinished, and packaged it as her own. Worse, she'd done it with a competitor, potentially violating NDAs and crossing serious client boundaries. And just like that, everything changed. Because stealing credit inside a company is one thing, but selling your colleague's work to a rival firm, that's another game entirely. I didn't know yet just how deep this would go. But I knew one thing for sure: I was done being silent. I thought I was dealing with betrayal. I was dealing with something far more calculated. The day after seeing my stolen design in Axiom's pitch deck, I walked into the office prepared to confront Lauren. But before I could even get to her door, I was called into HR. They didn't waste time. "Elena, we've received some concerns." They began sliding a thin folder across the table. Allegations that you may have shared proprietary concepts with outside firms, including Axiom West. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Inside the folder were printed emails, messages supposedly sent from my company account, attaching design files, thanking Axiom for their interest. They even included dates when I was out of town. I shook my head. "These aren't mine," I said. "Someone sent these using my login." The HR manager gave me that polite, guarded look. The one I'd seen 100 times. The one that said, "We've already made up our minds." I left the room, light-headed fingers trembling. The pieces clicked together like a bad dream. Lauren hadn't just stolen my ideas. She had planted evidence to make it look like I had betrayed the company. The next day, my access to internal folders was revoked. IT flagged my account for review. Colleagues stopped meeting my eyes. Even Marcus, who'd always had my back, looked nervous when we passed in the hall. I knew then this wasn't just about credit, or even competition. Lauren was building a case to erase me. That night I went home, sat at the kitchen table, Clara quietly doing homework nearby, and I finally told her everything. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she looked up and said, "So what are you going to do?" And for the first time in weeks, I had an answer. Not cry, not hide. I was going to find proof, objective proof, and show them what she'd done. What I didn't realize yet was that someone unexpected would help me, and that help would change everything. The following Monday, I walked into the office and felt the shift. Conversations stopped when I entered the room. People looked away too quickly. Others looked too long. The silence wasn't just awkward, it was strategic. Word had spread. The official story: I had shared company files with a competitor. Confidential designs. A betrayal. I wanted to scream. But what would I say? It's all a lie, and the person you promoted last month forged everything. No one wanted to hear that. Lauren had too much polish, too much trust. And me, I was just the quiet architect whose best days were behind her, or so they thought. That night I stayed up combing through old emails, sketches, and version histories. Somewhere in that chaos, I found a thread from 2 years ago. Lauren had written to me praising my flood adaptive platform concept, saying she couldn't wait to see how I'd evolve it into the next project. It was subtle, but it was something. Then I remembered Gina. She worked in IT. Once asked me for advice on breaking into sustainable design. I'd given her a few books, even took her to coffee once. I reached out carefully. "Gina, do you still have access to internal activity logs?" She paused before replying. "Is this about Lauren?" My breath caught. "Yes." She nodded slowly. "Then you should see this." Gina pulled up a system log showing remote access to my workstation during the week I was in Vancouver. Lauren's credentials had been used masked by a VPN, but not well. The digital trail was faint, but it was there. I backed up everything: emails, logs, time-stamped files onto a private cloud. This was no longer about office politics. It was about professional survival. And just as I thought, I'd caught my breath, another email came through. It wasn't from Gina. It was from Oliver Grant at Axiom West. He wanted to meet, not to discuss the design. He had news about Lauren, and what he told me would change everything I thought I knew about the woman who had tried to erase me. Oliver didn't mince words. He told me that Lauren had approached Axiom West months ago, pitching a partnership offering exclusive insights into Halden and Pierce's design strategies. She even mentioned having access to experimental concepts, ideas I had never shared outside my drafts. "She talked like she was the creative engine behind your firm," he said. But when we pressed her on technical details, she kept deflecting. He didn't say it outright, but I could hear it in his voice. He didn't trust her anymore. That same afternoon, I received an all-staff invitation, strategic partnership announcement, 3:00 p.m., main conference room. I knew what it was. The firm was preparing to unveil the collaboration with Axiom. Lauren would be front and center, and every slide in that deck would have pieces of my work. I didn't plan to attend, but Clara stopped me as I packed up my things. "You said you had proof," she said. "So go show them." At 2:55, I walked into the conference room, laptop in hand. The room was packed: partners, associates, clients on Zoom. Lauren stood at the head of the table, polished as ever. She caught sight of me, blinked once, then smiled like she always did. Harold, one of the founding partners, began the presentation. "Today marks a new chapter for Halden and Pierce. Thanks to Lauren King's vision, we're proud to announce I stood. Before you go any further, I think everyone deserves to see something." All eyes turned. I connected my laptop to the screen and clicked play. A sequence of design iterations filled the screen, each accompanied by metadata dates, and even my handwritten annotations. Then came the email from Lauren, praising my original concepts. Then the system log showing unauthorized access to my terminal. The silence was absolute. One of the clients leaned forward. These matched the submission we received last month. Down to the detail, Lauren's voice cut through. This is absurd! She's making this up! Those designs were shared as a team! Oliver's voice followed. No, Lauren. You gave them to us directly, and you said Elena was just support. The mask cracked, but it wasn't over, because what Harold said next would decide whether I had just exposed a fraud or started a war. Harold didn't speak right away. He looked at the screen, then at Lauren, and finally at me. You could feel the weight in the room. Decades of reputation, trust, and power, all hanging on what he was about to say. Elena, he said slowly. Do you have those files backed up elsewhere? Yes, I replied. I can provide anything the board or our clients need. He nodded, then turned to Lauren. You're dismissed from this meeting. Effective immediately, you are suspended pending an internal review. Lauren's face drained of color. She tried to speak, but Harold raised a hand. Not here, not now. She walked out with her chin lifted, but her steps were uneven. The fallout was swift. By the next morning, every partner had a copy of my evidence. Clients started calling, some angry, some just confused. Internally, people began talking. Quietly at first, then more openly. And then something unexpected happened. Gina, the IT analyst who had helped me, shared her own story of being overlooked, talked over, dismissed. Marcus followed. So did 2 other junior designers. The truth was, Lauren's manipulation had left bruises far beyond me. Within a week, Halden and Pierce terminated her contract. A public statement was released crediting my authorship on all relevant projects and naming me as lead on the Coastal Greenway. It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. Then came the offer. Axiom West reached out again, but this time not to collaborate. They wanted to hire me. Full creative lead. My team. The freedom to build without politics. I should have jumped at it. But something inside me hesitated. I'd spent so long working behind the scenes that now, with the spotlight finally on me, I realized I wanted to do something different. Something that would last. So I said no. And a week later, I filed the paperwork to start my firm. I called it Hartley Collective, and I promised myself it would be different. No more stolen ideas. No more silence. But before that dream could take root, there was still one conversation I needed to have. One that had waited far too long. A few days after Lauren's departure, Harold asked to meet. He looked tired. Older than I remembered, the way people do when they've been forced to face what they've ignored for too long. Elena, he began, I owe you more than I can say. And I know we can't undo what happened. But we'd like to offer you her position creative director formally. I paused, letting the words settle. It was tempting. Not because I wanted the title, but because part of me wanted to stand where Lauren once stood. To prove I could. But I looked around the office and saw more than just walls and drafts. I saw the quiet resentment in people like Gina, the fatigue in Marcus's eyes, and the way junior staff still spoke in guarded tones. I appreciate it, I said finally. But I'm starting something new. Something I want to build from the ground up. He nodded, not surprised. Is there anything we can do? There is, I replied. Give credit where it's due. Protect your team. Don't let what happened to me happen again. And to his credit, he listened. The firm launched an internal mentorship program, updated its design attribution policies. My name finally appeared on every public document tied to the projects I had created. It didn't erase the past, but it made space for healing. Meanwhile, Hartley Collective took shape slowly. I didn't want another high-rise. I wanted something smaller, more deliberate. We focused on community-first architecture, libraries, parks, and affordable housing projects that respected the land on which they stood. Clara helped design our first logo. And as for revenge, I let it go. Not because Lauren deserved grace, but because I deserved peace. When I was invited to speak at a Women in Design Summit 6 months later, I ended my talk with this: you don't have to burn bridges. Sometimes you walk away and build something better on the other side. And in the crowd, I saw young women faces full of fire and hope nodding like they knew exactly what I meant. But the most crucial nod came from one person waiting backstage holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Clara. She had one last question for me, and the answer would bring our story full circle. After the summit, we walked together in quiet. The kind of silence that isn't awkward, just full of things you don't need to say out loud. Clara held my hand like she used to when she was little, and just before we reached the car, she stopped and looked up at me. "Do you think it was worth it?" she asked. "All those years, letting someone else take credit for your work." I took a deep breath. Didn't answer right away. In my office at home, framed on the wall above my desk, hangs the first sketch of the Coastal Greenway project. It's not the polished version that got pitched or published. It's the one I drew in pencil on the back of Clara's math worksheet late one night when she was 10. The lines are shaky and half erased. There's a coffee stain in the corner, and a note from Clara in the margin: "Looks cool, Mom." That sketch changed everything. Not because it launched my career, but because it reminded me why I ever loved design in the first place. It wasn't about credit. It wasn't about awards. It was about creating spaces where people felt at home. I turned to Clara and smiled. "No," I said. But choosing to stand up for myself, choosing to build something of my own, that was worth everything. Back at Hartley Collective, we hung that sketch in our new studio lobby. Not behind glass, just pinned to the wall with 2 thumbtacks. Everyone sees it when they walk in: clients, interns, delivery drivers. And every time someone asks about it, I tell them the same thing. It's a reminder that even when your work goes unrecognized, even when your voice is ignored, your vision still matters. That's the legacy I'm leaving behind. Not just buildings, but belief. The belief that truth survives the silence. That good work finds its way back. That you don't have to win the game they play, you have to change the rules. So if you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, or pushed aside, don't walk away bitter. Walk away better. And maybe one day you'll hang your sketch on a wall somewhere, a beginning no one else saw coming. Before you go, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? And what time is it in your part of the world? We want to know how far these stories go. And don't forget to subscribe, because there's more to come.